Hello and welcome to the GodisaGeek Retrocast, and this is the third, well, is it third or fourth episode of our Turtles month? It's we've been doing so many of these. Fourth, there you go. It's our fourth Turtles episode, and joining me, as you heard, is my good co-host Robin Parker.
Hey, hey.
So this time we're going to move over to the Mega Drive, or the Genesis, if you're in that part of the world, and we're going with the Hyperstone Heist, which is quite an oddity. It's a bit like Turtles in Time, it's a bit like the original arcade machine, and it's a bit like something else entirely.
Yeah, as you'll see from this intro, I mean, the intro sequence is almost identical to Turtles in Time one on the Super NES, but you'll start to see, as we get into the game, there's quite a few major differences, but then, as you say, it's kind of a weird concoction of lots of different things. Yeah,
it really is. I've heard the enemies are a bit more aggressive in this version, and I think I probably believe that. I've deliberately put it on easy just so we can kind of rush through the game as quickly as possible, just to show you everything. It definitely looks, going into it, looks a lot different, not quite so colourful as the Turtles in Time on the SNES.
Yeah, a lot of it. SNES had a bit of superior colour palette, didn't it? And it could handle all the a bit more flashy special effects, so you don't get quite all the sort of Mode 7 type zoom-in graphics. It's all these cutscenes a little bit simpler on the Mega Drive.
Certainly, in a way that they've got a kind of different style to them. The cutscenes in this one, they're not so cartoony. They're a bit more, you know, maybe a bit more kind of comic bookish, kind of almost a bit more Japanese in a way.
Yeah, that was almost the Mega Drive and SNES comparison in general. A lot of games, a lot of the time, it would be a bit more cartoony on the SNES, like Jurassic Park, for instance. The Mega Drive version was quite realistic in comparison to the SNES version, and quite dark. And this one sort of follows that same model a little bit too. Certainly.
So we're hitting the first level, which is the sewer area, which was actually in the first Ninja Turtles arcade game. Was it the second level, I believe?
Yeah, I think it was.
Third.
You start to see quite a few recycled sprites, recycled backgrounds, and you also hear some recycled music as well.
Certainly. It's worth noting that this game on the Mega Drive actually has an extra button for dashing, which is quite handy, especially for tackling some of the foes.
Yeah, it's good, but as you can see from beating up these foot soldiers, because of the lack of Mode 7 on Mega Drive, you don't actually get the you can't throw the enemies into the screen. That was removed for Hyperstone Heist.
No, that is true, and that's I think the game is a lot worse off for its absence, I think.
Yeah, it was always a fun little touch, that one. So it just a bit less variety in your attacks on this game, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, it's, I think even looking at this background, as it says, it's going back to it looking a bit more realistic and a lot less cartoony. Obviously, the palette obviously looks a bit more dull than the SNES version, as we said, but it's kind of got its own charm to it.
Yeah, it's definitely a more realistic sewer anyway. It gives you more of the idea that you're down in a dank sewer than the SNES version.
Yeah. This game was released in 1993, so I think that was after the SNES version of the game. And I think by this time, it was about the time that Turtle Mania kind of started to die down a little bit.
Yeah, it had done a bit, but it probably didn't get quite the acclaim that the Turtles in Time did because of that as well, because it was a bit late to the show. But I mean, there are definitely some good things, like the levels are longer, and as you say, possibly a little bit harder than the SNES version, because Turtles in Time was a pretty easy game.
Yeah.
So it definitely didn't hurt this one being a bit more difficult. And yeah, there's not as many levels, but they are a bit more. A bit longer,
considerably longer. I think there's only 5 levels in this version, but they are very long, and I think you could probably finish the game between 40 minutes and an hour, I think, depending on the difficulty.
Yeah, so it kind of ends up being a similar length to Turtles in Time, but definitely a little bit tougher anyway. But then again, you do get, even some of the bosses are recycled from the previous games, which is a bit of a shame, considering the massive cast. You have the Turtles, bad guys, and sort of cameo goodies as well. You could have had a lot of different characters in it, but unfortunately they just kind of reused some of the same sprites.
Of course, we swiftly moved on to the second level, which has this little surfing scene, which isn't in any of the other versions. Well, not quite the same way. I mean, there is a surfing section in Turtles in Time, and there's sort of like a skateboarding section in the first Turtles arcade machine as well. And this, as I say, it kind of mixes all these different ideas and creates something different. But that also keeps some of the soundtrack, which I like, because some of the tracks in these Turtles games are actually really good.
Yeah, it's a bit they've sort of jazzed up a few of the tracks, so they're maybe a bit faster or a bit more energetic than the SNES ones. But as you say, they kind of have the same themes and the same tune, just changed a little bit.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see the interpretations of music in between different versions of games, because the SNES sound chip and the Mega Drive sound chip are two very different beasts. The SNES version is kind of based on samples a lot of the time, and meanwhile the Mega Drive sound chip is more based on FM synthesis, so it's two entirely different approaches to creating music.
Yeah, and it's good they didn't try and keep it identical as well, because I mean if they tried, it would have just come across as a poor imitation, as you say, because it couldn't recreate it identically anyway. So by changing it a little bit, it makes it just makes it a little bit better, because it could have just been very bland, trying to be what the SNES did and just not managing it.
Yeah, I get the impression that creating good music for the Mega Drive isn't impossible, but I think it's probably that little bit harder just because of the type of sounds you're dealing with. It's I think the Mega Drive's got a very kind of fartiness to it, I think.
It's a good term. Yeah.
Here we go, on a pirate ship, as you do, and just get myself into a picture.
Yeah, I suppose that's a good thing, but they could have been lazy and used the pirate ship from Turtles in Time, but they have created completely different backgrounds for this level, so at least you can't complain there with them recycling this level. Yeah,
it's kind of more taken inspiration and not carbon copied it, which I think that's what this game does very well. Is it does take these ideas from every Turtles are a scrolling beat 'em up that's come before, but it does something different. Just moved over to a cave now, which is actually in Turtles in Time, in the prehistoric era.
Oh yeah, of course.
So now we're really over. Just gonna fight a boss, Rocksteady.
And he looked more not in the time travelling outfit that you saw in Turtles in Time, more in his traditional, more recognisable outfit here.
That's right.
Which is quite. I mean, this is more like, as you say, the original arcade machine. So they've used bits and pieces from the different games. So I think pretty successful.
Yeah, and he does use the same attacks from the original arcade machine as well. It does seem he's a little bit kind of faster as well, I think, this time around.
It's in general. I mean, it's a quite a strange thing, because you would never get it nowadays, like with PlayStation 3, Xbox. You get a port of a title for different consoles. It's more or less identical. It was quite an interesting thing with SNES and Mega Drive. They didn't like to have, if possible, not have the games which were exactly the same to one another. They wanted something unique when they had a third party porting different games, and I think that made the sort of games library much more interesting back then.
Yeah, that is something I miss quite a lot about retro games. I think this is probably something I think we've spoken to internally a lot with our colleagues, but there's something to be said about having different versions of what is essentially the same game, but they can be entirely different, looking and sounding games. There's some games will have complete different levels. I know in particular, I think one of the Earthworm Jim games had a whole different level on the Mega Drive version, I believe, and it's a bit different to how things are now, where most kind of multi-format games are just very similar, and the only thing changing between them is like exclusive DLC or the like.
Yeah, I mean, often you'd get it was such an extreme back then that often you'd even get completely different developers or publishers who'd have the rights on different consoles. So you could get some massively, wildly different games. Obviously, this one isn't that different, but it was still interesting that you got such variety. Yeah,
I mean, this is a whole new environment that wasn't in any other games. So it's just Shredder's kind of Japanese style hideout. I think it's the headquarters of the Foot Clan, I think.
Yeah, which also gave the opportunity for a new boss character on this level. I think, isn't it Shredder's right-hand man from the movies?
Yeah, Tatsu. I think his name is. I think he's in this game at least once, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so it's good they could introduce some characters who hadn't been on cartridge before.
Of course, it does keep a lot of the enemies that are in the other games. There's these robot droids and the different coloured foot soldiers. Not quite so much variety in the foot soldiers in this version, I think.
No, they haven't got as many different weapons, have they? But well, there you go. As we were saying, that is a different one.
That is definitely one that I don't think is in the other version. So I've been proved wrong there.
Yeah. And then you just had someone swinging a nunchuck there as well, so there's still a bit of the difference. But yeah, as you say, not identical ones though. Again, there's a few differences. So, keeps it good.
Yeah, it does.
It was interesting to note that I think it was one of the later PS2 games actually had Turtles in Time unlockable as a bonus gameplay. I think it was Mutant Melee. You could actually unlock Turtles in Time. So, it's always fun when they do stuff like that in games. So you get the chance to have a bit of a retro gaming for free with your current purchase.
I think with the days of Xbox Arcade, PSN, and Wii, I think those days are long gone because I think developers now realise that they can actually get people to pay for these things.
Yeah, they can see the value in retro now, can't they?
Yeah, it's the likes of the NES games and Animal Crossing, and I think even I know the last Smash Bros on the Wii had some demos of Virtual Console games, but they were just demos, and you have to get the full versions.
Yeah, things are definitely moving that way, but I suppose it does lead itself to the HD remakes we see, such as the Turtles in Time HD remake, which I thought actually, unfortunately, did lose a bit of charm of from the original. Yeah,
I think that's always the danger when you move something into a different art format entirely. Going from the sprite-based stuff to the 2.5 3D stuff.
Yeah, didn't quite pull it off quite as well as the original, I don't think.
No. Interesting they've never tried to remake this one, because as I say, this is quite unique game. I think it is probably one of the better games on the Mega Drive as well, I think.
Yeah, Konami were always quite a strong publisher on the Mega Drive, and well, I mean SNES too, of course, but they were one of the publishers who didn't seem to pick a side, and they did put out very good quality titles on both.
Yeah, a lot of different exclusive titles and some unique content on both consoles, which is quite unusual. And we're just fighting Tatsu, as we mentioned earlier. He's a bit of a tricky customer.
Bit of a cheap customer.
Yep, that is the cheapness coming out that you'll see in many games of this type, especially of this era. I find that if you drop kicks, tend to even things up a little bit.
Yeah, it's part of a challenge, learning the patterns of the bosses, isn't it?
Yeah. There's nothing quite like seeing the flash of a boss to know that they're nearly dead.
Yeah. So you don't even need the life bar, really. You just need to, when it starts flashing red and shaking, then you know you're getting close.
Yeah, I believe some of the I think the original Turtles arcade machine didn't have any life bars. I think for the bosses, I think you just had to kill them or beat them up until they flashed redder and redder.
Yeah, it's more of a console idea, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah.
Health bars, because arcade machines would often just be one-hit affairs anyway for your own health bars, so you wouldn't have. But things like the health bars you see in this game were very much sort of came about more so with home console.
Yeah. I also miss enemies strategically moving to a particular location before they do their death animation.
Spontaneously combusting.
As you do. We've got another boss here. This is Baxter. You can see a little bit on. From the first level of Turtles in Time on the SNES.
Yeah, obviously in his human form here rather than his half-man, half-fly form.
Yeah. This is the version of him in the original Turtles arcade machine, I believe. As he spits out Mousers.
Yes, I mean, the original arcade game, it was ported to NES as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it lost a lot in the port. I mean, it ended up on a lot of microcomputers like the Amstrads and the Spectrums, and obviously they weren't going to compare with what was in the arcade machine. But I think the NES version was certainly a good try.
But obviously, I mean, it's good that this game makes sort of combines both Turtles in Time and the arcade game, because it would have been the first chance that Sega owners would have got to really play a Turtles game like this.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't that many Turtles games on the Mega Drive. I think it was this and Tournament Fighters, and other than that, it was quite sparse for the Turtles. But as I say, around this time of the 16-bit generation, Turtle Mania had started to peter out, and we started to see less and less of them. Yeah,
it's true. I mean, even when Tournament Fighters was out, it was possibly on the back end as well.
Yeah, it might have been after everyone had stopped caring. Children are fickle with things when it comes to cartoons, I find.
Yeah, and I suppose with the software development cycles, it might have been started when it was still very popular, but it didn't manage to make it out before the interest waned.
Yeah, of course you never know how long licenses are there for, or if they had to create a certain number of games as part of the contract as well. So
exactly.
It could have been another thing why some games that came out.
Very dramatic. Well, I love all the text in Konami games.
Surprisingly, relatively well translated.
Yeah.
Not exactly the most complicated thing, but it could have been a lot worse.
I think Sunset Riders is one of my favourite Konami games in terms of cheesy quotes. And as you say, some more of a sort of detailed artwork rather than cartoony style.
Yeah, it looks really good actually. I mean, it doesn't entirely follow the cartoon. It does its own thing, and it does look really good. It's a different take on it. So just tackling the final level here.
Yes, this level's quite relatively close to one of the late, I think possibly the final level in Turtles in Time. It's both called the Final Shell Shock, and then also this same sort of space station or Technodrome style background, I think, was used for that one too.
Yeah. I like the music in this, all the random haze and the general jolliness of it all. You can tell it's like meant to be for a Turtles game. It's got that style that is unmistakable.
Yeah, I think the use of digitized voices is slightly different in this one as well, I think.
Yeah, I don't think there's so much of it. It's probably not so clear as well, but no, it all works very well.
I like that you're playing through as Donatello, who was always my first choice.
Yeah, Donatello was always my go-to guy for the Turtles games, just because he always had the range, I found.
Yeah, definitely.
And in some cases, especially the original arcade machine, it's you needed Donatello in your team to tackle some of those bosses, just because he had that little bit extra range, which proved all the difference, especially in the 4-player game.
Oh yeah, nothing better than the actual full 4-player arcade machine with 4 sticks. Yeah.
Certainly. Unfortunately, this is only 2 players, but yeah, I'll take that. That's fine. So we got Krang again. Super Krang.
Yeah, actually in his full suit, but sort of not as big as you normally saw him as Super Krang in the cartoons.
No, of course not. Relatively easy to kill. It's just a lot of drop kicks I found when doing this.
He keeps charging at you, doing a Hulk Hogan big boot style maneuver.
That's right, yeah. He does take a lot of hits, this one though.
Yeah, but it's unfortunate that one of the later bosses seems relatively simple compared to the earlier ones. It's just the challenge, sort of the weight of the different bosses hasn't really makes sense in this game.
Again, it's down to knowing the patterns. You sometimes you get lucky and you kind of figure out the pattern first time round. I think that's what I did with this one.
I think this is almost taken. This is lifted from one of the surfing levels in Turtles in Time. I think this boss, the boss sprite and his different attacks.
Yeah, I think it's from Turtles in Time. I think it's in the future bonus level, I believe.
Yeah, this Neon City Surfing or something.
That's the one. The cross pollination once more.
It's
nearly gone.
You as well.
It's when he runs off the screen, I think, is always the difficulty. Don't know where it's going to pop out of.
And there we go.
And that's him dead. Well, I think that's enough for us for this week. We release new videos every Tuesday, which you can watch as part of the GodisaGeek YouTube channel, or as part of GodisaGeek TV on iTunes or Blip. You can also check us out on all the other podcasts, videos, news, reviews and previews at GodisaGeek.com. And finally, you can also follow us at the Retrocast for the latest goings on with the show. Until the next week, happy gaming.
See you soon.